As we move into another episode of the learning curve, there's talk about AI everywhere, whether it's chatbots, search engines, automated decisions, personalized experiences. But at the heart of all of this, I truly believe organizations are still struggling. Even with all the hype, even with all the buzzwords, even with all the excitement, they're really struggling to figure out ways to align AI to their strategy, embed it into their culture, and scale it from a proof of concept, which is where it's lying currently. But more importantly, they're also trying to figure out how do you make AI a meaningful driver of revenue. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Ritwik Mishra. I'm the Chief Client Officer at KNOLSKAPE and happy to be your host for this edition of The Learning Curve, where we'll explore this critical question on AI with someone who's been at the heart of data driven transformation for decades. Professor Amit Joshi is joining us as an award winning expert in artificial intelligence, business analytics, and marketing strategy, and one of the world's leading voices on how organizations can navigate digital change. At IMD, Professor Joshi helps global organizations from fintechs to pharma giants turn data into real business impact. With a background that spans both industry and academia, Amit is known for demystifying AI and guiding leaders through complex digital transformations. Whether he's advising Fortune 500 CEOs or training executives on how to scale AI strategically, his core message is absolutely clear: technology alone won't transform your business. Strategy, talent, and trust will. Amit, a very warm welcome to this episode of The Learning Curve.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. So before we get into demystifying AI, which is easier said than ever, we do have a few questions to warm up the session and for our audience as well. If you're game for it, we can begin with a rapid fire section.
Let's go.
All right. So Amit, a tech trend that you think is overhyped?
Without a doubt, AGI.
AGI, nice, nice. The most underestimated skill for leaders in the AI age?
Probably curiosity.
Yeah, makes sense. More important for the future, tech intuition or data literacy?
I'd say both are pretty important, but I would say literacy before tech intuition, because if you have basic literacy, you can use the tech to actually achieve a lot of things.
Absolutely. You need that foundation of data to be strong in order to build on that. And I think that's where a lot of organizations are missing the game. But we'll continue. 3 words you would use to describe the future of AI for organizations.
I would say challenging,
Right.
promising,
Yes.
definitely transformative.
Excellent. Great choices, Amit. Thank you. Biggest surprise you have encountered while advising Fortune 500 companies?
How much gap or how much variance there still is amongst executives in terms of their understanding of this technology.
Yeah. I give
it never
that to
ceases
you.
to amaze me. Yeah.
We run these roundtables, Amit, across the country and across sectors, and it's just amazing to see the variance in the level of understanding and even proposition of how to use AI. And I think somewhere that level setting needs to happen in order for organizations to start realizing the value. So thank you so much, Amit. Really appreciate that candor. And let's move into the set of questions that we have for you. Let's start with your journey from sales at Cadbury India to becoming a global authority on AI and analytics. What sparked your transition into academia and the world of data-driven strategy?
So exactly like you mentioned, I was in Cadbury's, I was learning a lot. And then at some point I felt that I needed to do something different. Perhaps corporate life wasn't for me. I wasn't cut out for corporate life for a variety of reasons. And through a series of serendipitous events, I had the opportunity to, first apply for a PhD program. And then I was lucky enough to get into a few PhD programs. And then I said, hey, what the heck, let's try this out, which basically had me move to UCLA to do my PhD. And from there, started my journey in the area of, well, I was always in marketing, but in data-driven marketing, first understanding the long-run impact of marketing. And then about 8 years ago, when I moved to IMD, I very quickly moved from, actually analyzing data, actually doing some of the hard analytics myself, to thinking in a more strategic way, to taking a much more big picture view of this tool,
Right.
along with, relatively early machine learning back then, which is what executives were demanding at the time.
Right.
And then since then, it's all been machine learning, AI, Gen AI, but from a very strategic, very applied, very, very practical perspective.
Very interesting journey, Amit. Talk to us, Amit, a little bit about data and why does it not find the prominence that it should be finding in organizational decisions, organizational strategy. I still see organizations struggling with data from it being comprehensive, it being concise, it being clean, and it's still not there yet. And a lot of organizations struggle with that. What's the reason, and is there any way out for legacy organizations to be able to bring some normalcy to that segment? Because I strongly believe that's really the holy grail of doing everything properly afterwards.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Ritwik. And you're correct. I mean, organizations around the world struggle. I think a definite part of the reason is that, just data and analytics is pretty overwhelming for a lot of people, right? I mean, a lot of us, some of us were lucky enough to be trained in, for example, mathematics and sciences and
Right.
modeling and engineering, etc. But a lot of us were not. And these guys are incredibly smart executives, but they never had the basic training. So there's this initial fear or an initial hesitancy, let's just
Right.
call it, towards working with this. There's a little bit of inertia saying, hey, look, I've taken decisions using intuition, gut feel, experience, whatever word you want to use, and it's worked reasonably well.
Right.
Why do I need to change? So that's the starting point.
Right.
Add to that the fact that, I mean, let's face it, for most traditional organizations, now I'm not talking about the Googles and
Right. Right.
Amazons of the world, right, who were born digital, but for
Right.
most traditional organizations, the data itself is just incredibly messy.
Yeah.
It's in multiple places and multiple formats. Like you mentioned, a lot of it is not clean. A lot of it is just wrong. It just,
Right.
it has too many errors. It's not usable.
Right.
So you start with a basic hesitancy. If you kind of say, okay, let me try and do something with it, then there's a problem of, okay, where the heck can I even find this data? I mean, who has it? Once I get it, is it even clean? Can I use this? Is this going to give me something that's going to be practical? That's going to be actually give me a solution to the problem that I'm facing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
once you cross all of this, you've got to make sure that you do this in a way that's strategic rather than just doing data for data's sake or something. So there are many levels of issues which kind of hold back most traditional organizations from making best use of this, which is why the typical statistic given is that only about 3 to 5% of the data is actually used, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 95% of it or so is basically just a dead asset.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's one big reason for CRMs to fail across the globe. And you go, revisions after revisions of CRMs, but you still don't have what you would want to see. But I can understand the frustration, from a senior leadership perspective. You would want to move quickly into a space where you're using data for decisions rather than thinking about where my data is. So let's hope AI, in some way pushes organizations to get that part right. But just want to go back, Amit, you often say that no digital transformation is complete without truly understanding data. What does understanding actually look like in practice? Any
Yeah,
examples from your work would be great to hear.
absolutely. I mean, there's quite a few examples abounding. So look, I honestly do believe that data is it's kind of like the unused superpower that most companies have, right?
Yeah.
Even legacy companies have tremendous amounts of data that's lying sprinkled around the organization. It's there somewhere, often not in accessible ways, but it exists, right? I mean, that's the thing. And the catch is, what I really mean by understanding data is understanding what problems data can solve for you. Look, all of us are not going to get up tomorrow morning and turn into star analysts. That's
Yeah.
not going to happen. That is not what is required.
Right.
However, each executive has a really deep understanding of their industry, of their function, of their role, as well as a good understanding of the kinds of problems that they're facing, right? I mean, whether it's customer facing, internal facing, efficiency, innovation, whatever it is. What I really mean by understanding data or utilizing data is, now, can you take the problems that you're facing on a day-to-day basis? These could be tactical issues, these could be strategic issues, and figure out a way in which data could potentially help you.
Right.
So you don't need to run the models, you don't need to do the heavy lifting, but what you need to do is you need to say, okay, here is a really objective view or an
Right.
objective version of a problem that I'm facing. Here is potential data that I know I'm collecting or my organization is collecting. You are an expert. Can you help me put two and two together so
Right.
that together we can come up with a solution? So this is
Makes
what I mean by this, right? You don't need to be an expert in doing it yourself, but you need to frame the problem the right way. You need to make sure that you point the experts to the right place where the data are, and then good things tend to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. If I can just add to this explanation, Amit, it's also about storytelling with data, right? So you need to be able to understand what's the higher level data and how are you going from that higher level data down to a data set that actually means value to you or brings value to you or helps you in your job. And that jump from the higher level data set should be iterative and it can't just go all over the place jumping. It needs to be interconnected, it needs to have a storyline, it needs to build on each other, it needs to build on the previous and create suspense or curiosity for the next one. Right? I think that's critical as well from our understanding perspective.
Unquestionably, right? Because even analyzing data, getting outputs from it is just part of the story.
Right.
Then comes the thing that you're talking about, which is how do I convert this analysis that I've got? Let's face it, analysis of data just gives you more data in
Right.
different formats,
You're right.
right? It doesn't give you an answer.
Right.
Now, it is up to you as an executive, as a leader, to turn the analysis into an answer, into a
Right.
story, into a strategy that's actually going to benefit you, your organization, your function, and your role.
Yeah.
That's critical.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks joining the workforce today, Amit, like you said, of course, there is this fear about am I treating data the right way? Am I looking the data the right way? It lays bare everything, right? And so you're kind of tentative on handling data, but when we talk about data at that level, at that career level, they usually leave it at creating the data or consolidating that data, not taking it all the way to from analysis to insights to recommendations, right? And I think I keep telling people joining us is that you've got to think about data all the way to recommendations where it becomes useful for the leadership.
Absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. So I'm going to continue take the conversation forward. So we spoke a little bit about agentic AI, where you thought it's slightly overhyped, maybe at this point in time. I want to talk about generative AI and the large language models evolving rapidly. How should companies adapt their AI strategies because of this? And there's a lot of overlay of governance, ethics happening here as well. Is there a risk of chasing hype over value?
No, without a question. But before I come to that, just one clarification. I meant AGI, artificial general intelligence, is the hype, not agentic. Agentic, I think it's a real deal.
Right.
I'm quite bullish on agentic, and that actually it's a good segue to this question. Actually, I do think there is a ton of hype. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I do think even in things that are practicable right now, like large language models, like even agentic AI that we were just talking about, the hype overwhelms the practicality currently. A lot of people just fall for the hype where, look, I can just throw this at my problem and then magic will happen and, the skies shall open and then money will fall down, right? We
Right.
know that does not happen. This is an incredible tool,
Right.
but it requires a ton of scaffolding, a ton of engineering work, and a ton of strategic thinking to actually make it work.
Right.
Right. So please, let's anyone listening to this, please don't fall for the thing, oh, I read in Economic Times that this company did that. Hell, I can do that. It's not as easy as most people make it sound.
Right.
There's a ton of back end work that needs to
Right.
go through this.
Right.
The second thing that's happening in this context is that the tech is moving very fast. So, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when this thing came out, everybody and their uncle was talking about prompt engineering, how prompt engineering is going to be the skill for the future.
Right.
There were people who quote unquote had prompt engineering skills. I don't know where they got them from, but they had prompt engineering skills apparently the day after ChatGPT was released. And these people were getting astronomical salaries, etc. And I went on record saying this is not a skill for the future. Do not waste money on prompt engineering for a variety of reasons. And what we are seeing today is with every new release of a tool, the kinds of prompts change.
Absolutely.
Right? So you can't really be an engineer of one type of prompts.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the basic common sense logic still applies, but they don't. So it's very easy to fall into these kinds of hypes without realizing that the technology, as incredible as it is changing extremely rapidly. So what works, right? What have I seen working? What really works, what you really need to do as executives is, first of all, figure out what's your North Star. Where do you want to go? It's incredible for me how many organizations just don't do that, right?
True.
I mean, how many organizations have this, oh, let 1,000 flowers bloom,
right?
Which can work in some times, but for the most times, what you end up with is literally 1,000 small AI, Gen AI projects, each of which individually looks interesting, but none of which scale up.
True.
This is the classic thing that you see in legacy organizations. And this is because you're trying to increase efficiency, but you're also trying to innovate. You're trying to do supply chain things, but you're also trying to help with accounts receivable. And then you're also trying to do marketing creative and do programmatic advertising at the same time. I mean, and you're like, yes, I mean, it can do all of that, but just because it can do all of that does not mean you need to do all of it. Right? Figure out what's your North Star, figure out your focus, know that tech is going to change rapidly, and then move quickly in these specific areas.
Very well said. Really love your talk about the North Star, Amit. I think we're seeing a lot of organizations, for lack of a better word, it's the fear of missing out. So you're trying to invest in some place, and then you suddenly hear about some advancement in a different place, and you hear your competition moving in there, and you pivot and you start to put your resources there, and then before you know it, you're all over the place without actually trying to know where you are headed. Why do you want to use AI? What do you want to use it for? Is it competitive differentiator? Is it efficiency? Is it impact? Customer service? Where do you actually want to make the biggest impact?
It's amazing you should mention that, right? So I'm going to narrate an anecdote to you without naming names. You mentioned fear of missing out. So sometime, a little while ago, a couple of months ago, I was with the C-suite, the CEO and the board members of a Fortune 500 company. And I was doing my usual AI spiel. And this is a traditional company. It's a very, very successful company, but they're a traditional organization, okay? Industrial. And they kept pushing me saying, oh, no, we need to apply Gen AI. We need to do a Gen AI this. And I kept pushing back saying, folks, honestly, I don't see too much value. You're going to throw away a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know if you're going to get ROI. And this went on for about an hour and a half.
Wow.
Then we took a break. Right? And in the break, I just went out. We were all getting a cup of coffee. And I took the CEO aside. I said, what's happening? Right? I mean, isn't this obvious that this is not going to work? And he's like, look. And this is a family-owned company, okay? And they said, look, we are a family-owned company. When I go talk to the owner tells me, oh, when I play golf with my other billionaire buddies, everyone is talking about what they're doing with Gen AI. I'm the only one who's not doing something. So I want you to do something with Gen AI. And I'm like, if this is your reason, you're guaranteed to fail. You're guaranteed to fail. And this is a really successful Fortune 500 company, right? These guys are not some schmucks who don't know what they're doing. These guys are incredibly smart people.
Amazing.
But this is the kind of hype that we are living
Yeah,
through right
yeah,
now.
yeah. These are
It's
the
just
reasons that
crazy.
people are getting into AI, right? It's give me a story for my
Unbelievable.
golf buddies.
Absolutely. It's crazy.
Successful or not, I just need to talk to talk to them about it.
Exactly. Exactly. It's
Great.
incredible. Yeah.
Amit, you lead several flagship programs at IMD. How do you balance the technical depth of AI with the strategic mindset that's needed at the executive level?
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. Speaking of FOMO, right? So when 2.5 years ago, when Gen AI suddenly exploded, I was trying to scramble and read multiple things and try to keep up. And within a few months, I realized that this is moving way too fast, right? So even when you're quote unquote dedicated, you're thinking like a student, you're constantly learning,
Right.
there aren't enough hours in the day to keep up with what's happening. It's simply
True.
impossible. There have been days when I've literally gone into a session with executives, and in the middle of the session, things that I was talking about have changed,
Wow.
right? This is how fast things move in this particular field. So at one point of time, I decided, saying, "Hey, look, there's no way I can keep on top of all the tech."
Right. Right.
So what I now do is I've got my set of newsletters, I've got my set of resources that I look at regularly. And besides that, I've got some people that I follow. We've got a faculty AI chat at IMD where different people post interesting things. And that's how I try to keep up with this, right? It's just incredibly, incredibly hard. Of course, one thing I do relatively rigorously is I try to play with the different kinds of AIs that are there, because these are very hands-on things.
Right.
You're not really going to learn about deep seek by watching a YouTube video.
True.
I,
True.
I don't believe that,
True.
right? You've got to fool around with deep sea. You've got to try to break it, and then you've
Right.
got to try to do the same thing with GPT-5 or something like this.
Yep.
And then you will start to understand the difference. I would say start, right?
Yeah.
I would not say learn. I would say start to understand the
Yeah.
differences.
Yeah.
So this is something, and this is something I would encourage your listeners as well. Like, please
Yeah.
get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
Don't 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 wait for somebody to tell you how this works.
Yeah.
Go figure this out for yourself. So this is something I try to do.
No, and I think goes back to what you're talking about prompt engineering as well, right? The more you play with it, you start to get a hang of, how do you want to prompt? How do you want to prompt, different models, right? And they all
Exactly.
have different purposes. So once you start prompting and working with these models, you start to see the output, you see the differences in the output. That's when you start to put things together, saying, okay, this is how I need to navigate through the various models.
And nowadays, what I do is I just get Gen AI to create prompts for me. I tell them, hey, I want to do this. I want this answer from Gemini. Can you create me a prompt that Gemini will give me a good answer for this? And it'll create me a prompt. And then I
Nice.
copy paste that into
Didn't know
Gemini.
about
That's what I
this.
do now.
I'm going to try
Yeah.
for this now.
I just do this now. I don't even think, I don't even break my brain on prompting now. I just
Right.
do that, and if it doesn't work, I go back and tell, what's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Give me a better prompt. You know, so that's what I do
But we've
now.
got to be a little careful because I heard they've changed the tone on
Oh yeah, yeah,
GPT-5.
yeah, yeah.
So, you want to be nice to it if you want to get some good responses. But Amit, many organizations are still treating AI as a pilot project or a siloed initiative. We spoke a little bit about that. Why do you think there is so much difficulty to scale AI across the enterprise, move from proof of concept to product? And I'm going to actually add something to this question is, there's a lot of conversation around ROI and whether the big four are actually going to start making money out of all the investments that are going into AI. Your thoughts on it?
So terrific, terrific questions both. I actually have a paper in MIT Sloan Review on scaling up AI initiatives. Uh, what I find in most organizations is, like we've already mentioned, there's this tendency to let 1,000 flowers bloom, not have a
Right.
clear north star, which hinders scaling, obviously. The second thing that happens is a lot of the problems, a lot of the AI solutions which provide value in proof of concepts are simply not scalable.
Okay.
And companies don't think through that when they're green lighting POCs.
Right.
Okay. Uh, simple example. I mean, if I greenlight a POC to create marketing material for some of my smaller brands, it's probably going to work very well.
Right.
Right? We know this is a use case that works. We know this is, it's in a relative sandbox that you have control over. It's going to give you some really interesting ideas. And for some of your smaller brands, for which you may not have a full-time ad agency at your disposal or a creative agency, this can actually give you advertising content, slogans, pictures, images,
Right.
go-to-market strategies, etc. The question is, are you going to take that and put it onto your billion-dollar brands? And the answer is no, you're not going to do it. Right? So this is an example of something that works beautifully in small scale,
Right.
but it was never going to scale.
Right.
You're going to continue doing that for that little brand that gives you 100,000 a year. I mean, if you're a Fortune 500 company or smaller, for smaller companies.
Right.
So a lot of the projects that greenlight and which actually succeed are not scalable, right? So this is something organizations need to think of when they are greenlighting the POC, saying, if this is successful,
right,
can we take this forward?
Right. Right.
Right. And that's something a lot of companies don't do.
And I think they're greenlighting these projects because they have low risk. And, so it's easier for me to say yes to that without actually realizing if it's successful, can I actually scale it to a big product?
It is, right. It's amazing how often there really is no long-term scaling idea when the greenlighting is happening. And then you are suddenly surprised that it's not scaling. Well, you didn't think about scaling when you were doing it. How do you expect it to scale unless it's by coincidence that this also scales? Right. So this is usually what tends to happen in these situations.
And your thoughts on the revenue bit, of AI actually, providing the ROI, necessary ROI to the big fours, given the huge amount of investments that are happening.
It is, yeah. So look, a common error that I see companies making, and this is the companies should not blame themselves. Everybody's doing it, and it's kind of nature, is using old metrics to kind of understand what's happening with Gen AI. Right? This is a new tool. Even traditional machine learning metrics will probably not work with this, because let's understand this. This is a tool where a probabilistic input gives you a probabilistic output. Right? This is not something we were dealing with either with analytics or even with traditional AI.
Right.
Therefore, the kinds of metrics you need to track, both in terms of positives, which is the outcomes, but also something that you just mentioned, Ritwik, in terms of risk, have to be very different.
Yeah.
They have to be very different.
Yeah.
The second thing is, a lot of companies, when they're looking at ROI from AI initiatives, they tend to think of AI initiatives very similar to software implementation. So now most companies have gone through these massive software implementations,
right.
90s, 2000s, SAP, ERP, Salesforce, etc.
Right.
And we have metrics for that. We've seen, they were costly, they were painful, they were long-term, and then we knew how to calculate the ROI. And AI feels like that. It's costly, it's painful. It happens over the long term, and you think, yeah, I can use the same metrics that I used when I was implementing SAP in 2002 or whatever that was, or in 1995, whatever that was, right?
Right.
It's exactly not like that, right? This is nothing like software implementation. Okay?
Yeah.
So the kinds of metrics, if you use software implementation ROI metrics for this particular thing, it's not going to work. It's not going to work in the sense it's a meaningless metric. I mean, you'll probably get some output from it, but it has no connection to what's actually happening on the ground.
Right.
So I'll be honest with you. I don't have any gold standard metrics to recommend to you saying, oh, everybody should use this. It's going to change based on the kind of tool, based on the kind of application that you're doing,
right.
how mature your organization is, and a bunch of factors. But what I can tell you is, if you're just copy pasting the old metrics and hoping they'll work, that's probably not going to work.
And I think that's where the whole conversation around North Star becomes important. Is what are you chasing, and how are you going to know that you are after the right thing, and you are on the right path and the right track. That becomes important.
Without a question, right? Yeah. Because otherwise, I mean, look. The metrics that you need to think about if your focus is internal efficiency, right, and the kinds of risk that you'll be willing to take is going to be significantly different,
right,
for the metrics and risk parameters if you're going to be customer facing.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
if you don't know what you're trying to do and you
Right.
can't force fit a single group of metrics into various
Yeah.
applications, you need to be
Yeah.
very, very clear.
Clear. Yeah. Yeah. And not just what you're doing, but why are you doing it? I think that that inherent commitment will come only if you know why you're doing what you're trying to do. So completely agree, Amit. I'm going to move us forward on the last question here, Amit. It's what advice do you give to leaders trying to build trust or psychological safety with employees who are anxious about the emergence and the growth of AI in the work that they are doing for a variety of reasons?
This is an important question. I'm seeing this anxiety. I'm seeing fear, even more than anxiety. It's a level above anxiety. I'm seeing outright fear of AI taking over jobs, of AI essentially
Right.
making large volumes of people redundant. Uh, I would say there's a you could say it's a two-level technique that you can use, right? I mean, at the very first level, it's critical that a majority of the people in your organization understand that this is nothing but relatively established, relatively old-fashioned mathematics and statistics that is churning out more mathematics and statistics.
Right.
This is not Terminator, this is not Skynet, this is not anything supernatural or
Right.
godlike. This is pretty well understood mathematics and statistics
Right.
that's essentially uh, doing autocomplete,
Mm.
right? Or it's making a prediction. So demystification of this tool, understanding what's a little bit inside the black box intuitively. I'm not saying everybody needs to program neural networks, but everybody needs to understand that this is nothing but basically a probabilistic autocomplete. So demystification across the organization is critical.
Mhm.
And the second thing that needs to happen, Ritwik, is you need to develop champions within the organization who
Right.
can speak of the value of this, right?
Right.
So another anecdote comes to mind. I was working with a massive Fortune, one of the biggest pharma companies on the planet, uh, and they were rolling out an AI tool to help with a certain process.
Right.
And they rolled this tool out in Germany, and it was incredibly successful. They took this exact tool and rolled it out in the UK, and it was a complete flop. Okay.
Right.
So they started investigating, and people start giving, oh no, the UK market is totally different from the German market, and what works in Germany never works in the UK. And
Right.
at some point, you're like, come on, I mean, these are just excuses. We know this, right?
Right.
Because tomorrow you're going to say, oh, what works in London doesn't work in Birmingham, and
Right.
what works on this side of the Thames doesn't work on that side of the Thames. I mean, there's infinite excuses to give. So he started, digging deep, and eventually, what they found out is that the folks in Germany, just coincidentally, they had a standard rollout of learning tools and exercises. The folks in Germany had gone through the demystification of this. As a consequence, when they started using the tool, they had the right feedback mechanism to use it if something was going wrong, give feedback,
Right.
etc., etc.
Right.
The UK folks had not done this demystification yet.
Mm.
They were given the tool.
Interesting.
They were scared. They said, okay, this thing is going to replace my job. Let me not use this.
Oh,
More importantly, if it's making a mistake, let me not tell it it's making a mistake, right? Obviously, what happened, I mean, it's not rocket science after
right.
that. The machine kept giving the same recommendations, and then these guys said, hey, look, this doesn't work. It's giving the same recommendations as 6 months ago. It's useless.
Yeah.
So what they had to do is what we said, first demystify, understand what it is. Then what we did is we found like 4 or 5 or 6 people across the UK
Right.
who were actually using this particular tool,
Mm.
and they had seen a significant change in their performance levels in just 6 months. So we took these people who were their peers and we
Right.
put them in front of the group and said, hey, don't listen to us. Listen to your peers
Right.
talking about this. And what they essentially said is, look, folks, this is not going to replace us
Right.
in the
Right.
near future, but you'll get a higher bonus. You're going to hit your KPIs much faster. You're going to become more efficient. And
Right.
then people started listening.
Wow.
Right? So this is how you would need to handle it.
It's just amazing, Amit. You just gave us a masterclass on change management as well. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Amit. This conversation can keep continuing on AI, and there's a lot that we can pick your brains on. But thank you so much for taking time out and talking to us. I'm sure our listeners are eager to, go through this recording and get some of the responses that they've been hoping for. And hopefully we'll bring you in for round two at some later point as this technology moves forward. And there's a lot more for us to unravel with you. But for now, thank you so much, and wishing you a very good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ritwik. Thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you.